I'm JJ Barnes and you're watching my latest book reading. I'm on to chapter 8. I'm reading Lilly Prospero and the Magic Rabbit, which is the first book that I ever wrote in completion, and it came out in 2016. I've grown a lot since I wrote this. I've grown and I've changed, and I love reading this for a lot of reasons, because it represents a time in my life that I'm not in now for a number of reasons. I spent nearly 10 years trying to get this story created, and obviously I'm a lot older than I was now. So it's a really interesting look back on what was in my life at that time and memories, and it's really interesting. So thank you so much for being here with me while I read it. It's lovely. I love this story, I love these characters, and I'm really excited to revisit them. I will be writing book 3. I'm just, when I've written a lot of other stuff that I'm also in the middle of. But yeah, so I will start reading it now, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Chapter 8. When Lilly left Alex, there was still a little bit of time before the end of lunch, but she didn't bother going to get anything to eat and headed straight back to form room, thinking hard about how she would impress whomsoever needed impressing at this confusing party she was required to attend. As she pushed open the form room door, she spotted Saffron sitting alone at her desk, with her face in her hands, her body heaving as she wept in huge and miserable sobs. "Hey, Saffron, what happened?" Lilly cried, rushing over and sitting down by her friend. She put a gentle hand on her arm. "Are you okay?" "No," Saffron sniffed, looking up at Lilly with huge wet green eyes. "It was awful." "What was?" asked Lilly. "I was having lunch on my own, and Maisie and Georgina came over with some friends and sat with me," she said, as tears slid down her cheeks. "I was so lonely, and I was pleased to have company, you know?" "I'm sorry," said Lilly sadly. "I'm so sorry." "Thanks," said Saffron miserably. So they started chatting and stuff like normal, but when they got up to go, Maisie grabbed my bag and tipped everything out all over the floor. All my stuff fell in my spaghetti and across the floor, and there was tampons and pens and stuff going everywhere. She started sobbing again, her face bright red with humiliation at the memory. "And they just laughed at me. Everyone just walked off, and they left me there, and everyone was laughing. I don't think I even managed to get all my stuff back, because I just grabbed what I could and ran." "Oh God, Saffron," breathed Lilly, feeling completely awful about herself. "I'm so sorry." "It's okay. I know you wouldn't have left me if you didn't have to," said Saffron. She sniffed and smiled a smile that was so trusting and earnest that it made Lily's heart hurt. "I just wish Maisie wasn't so evil to me. We used to be friends." "It's okay though. I'd rather be friends with you anyway." "I'm glad we're friends too," said Lilly, as the lunch bell rang. As everyone started funneling into the room, Lilly watched as Maisie cackled and elbowed Georgina when she saw Saffron's blotchy face. Lilly glared at her in fury, hating her for making Saffron feel so embarrassed and unhappy. Remembering Saffron's humiliation before, and determined to make it even, she pulled out a pad of paper and pencil, and hastily drew a spider. Keeping a protective arm around the pad, she watched as the little spider quivered and dragged its way out of the page. The spider looked up at Lilly, keen to make a good impression as it began its new life, with which it had been gifted. Lilly leaned down and, very quietly, whispered instructions. The spider, eager to please, nodded in understanding and quickly skittered off the table and down the leg. Lilly saw it shimmy its way across the floor, darting around bags and table legs until it reached Maisie. It waved a leg at Lilly, and she flapped a hand at it to hurry up. The spider started to climb. Maisie felt the tickle on her calf of the spider's legs and reached down to scratch it, but the spider jumped out of the way just in time. Lilly watched as it reappeared around the back of Maisie's kneecap and waved to her again. Watching with her heart pounding in her chest, Lilly eagerly awaited the reaction when the spider appeared in front of her. "Oh my God!" shrieked Maisie as the spider crawled up onto her arm and began running towards her hand. She leapt into the air, knocking the spider to the floor, and, before Lilly could stop her, slammed her foot straight down on it. "No!" screamed Lilly, launching herself across the room at Maisie in horror and rage. "What did you do that for?" "What are you screaming at me for?" shouted Maisie, shoving Lilly away from her. "It's just a spider." You didn't have to kill it, Lily cried, tears streaming down her face. It didn't do anything. Mrs. Robinson appeared at Lily's side and put a hand on her shoulder. Come on, Lily. Why don't you step outside and calm down for a minute, she said gently. I'll scrape it off my shoe and you can bury it if you like, said Maisie, laughing coldly. Shut up, screamed Lily, turning on Maisie with hatred boiling inside her, wanting to reach out and smack her in the smug face. Come on, now, said Mrs. Robinson firmly, and led her out into the corridor where Lily fell to the floor sobbing. The teacher crouched down beside her and put a gentle hand on her arm. What's going on, Lily? Are you okay? She killed it, Lily wailed, her head in her hands and her shoulders heaving as agonised sobs of guilt racked her body. I know, said Mrs. Robinson sadly. I never kill spiders either. I'm not a fan of killing any animal, actually. I've been vegetarian for years. But this is too strong a reaction, honey. You need to calm down. Are you going to be ready to come back in? Lily shook her head and kept crying, so Mrs. Robinson gently patted her shoulder and stepped back into the classroom, leaving her alone. Lily felt sick and dizzy. The spider had been made by her and died because of her. All it had wanted to do was make her happy, and it had been killed. She caused death, and she felt like her insides were dying because of it. A moment later, Saffron stepped out of the form room and closed the door. She sat herself down on the floor next to Lily and put her arm around her shoulders. Mrs. Robinson told me to come and sit with you. Thanks, said Lily, sniffing miserably. Did you make that spider? Asked Saffron quietly. Yeah, Lily whispered. To punish Maisie for being mean to me? Yeah. Thanks, she said. I'm so sorry it died. Me too, said Lily, wiping her eyes on her sleeve and nodding sadly. I guess being responsible for lives is a big deal, huh? Said Saffron, leaning back and putting her head on the wall, a contemplative look on her face. Yeah, said Lily, copying her and leaning back against the wall, her tears starting to dry. I get it, said Saffron quietly. They sat together in silence. Lily couldn't stop thinking about the spider, but after a few minutes she sighed, wiped her eyes and stood. As they stepped back into the classroom, Lily saw confused faces around the room staring at her, but she didn't care. She felt too wretched to be bothered about people that didn't understand reality. After the bell rang, Saffron and Lily walked side by side, talking quietly about magic and the importance of respecting life, when Maisie tapped Saffron on the shoulder. Sorry about lunchtime, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's such a shame Lily couldn't take you with her, isn't it? You know, when she was hanging out with Alex. Lily's mouth fell open as Maisie looked at her with a sanctimonious smile, then stalked away with her head in the air. Alex? Saffron asked, turning to Lily with a face slapped by betrayal. You were hanging out with Alex? Lily stuttered in panic. Just a bit. Seriously? After everything? Saffron, I couldn't tell you. It's... Lily's mind went blank. She couldn't think of an excuse. It's what? Because I don't have magic and you don't have to include me. Don't have to tell me the truth, demanded Saffron. Does Alex have magic too, or are you just seeing him without telling me? I can't tell you, whispered Lily, her eyes on the floor. Whatever, Lily, said Saffron, turning away from her. I thought we were friends. Sobbing on her bed, Lily felt Geoffrey gently stroking her hair with a soft, warm paw. Priscilla sat by her feet, washing her paw and observing. It's all gone wrong. How has it all gone wrong? First, I couldn't stop Molly coming alive. She moaned and gestured at the fish in its newly acquired bowl on her desk. Then I had to tell Saffron about magic when I promised I wouldn't. And then a spider I made got killed. And then Saffron fell out with me. This day sucks. It's plotting against me. The day? Asked Geoffrey. It's made everything go wrong, she wept. It wasn't the day, Lily. It was you, said Priscilla, flicking her tail. Geoffrey frowned at her and battered at her with a paw. I didn't mean to, said Lily, sitting up and looking miserably at the two animals. No, but you had a choice, said Geoffrey carefully. You always have a choice. You chose to draw Molly. You chose to tell Saffron about magic. You chose to draw the spider and send it after Maisie. And you chose to lie to Saffron about who you were seeing. I had to draw Molly. I had to tell Saffron, and I had to lie to her, said Lily crossly, glaring at Geoffrey. I'm sorry, but you didn't have to, he said sadly. You chose to. It might have been the right choice, and you might have seen no other option. But everything you do has a consequence. You chose, and now you're paying for that choice. But it's not fair, cried Lily. Unfortunately, life isn't built around fairness, said Geoffrey. He sounded genuinely heartbroken. Lily went to bed early that night and cried herself to sleep. Saffron wasn't in form the next morning, and she didn't come to maths either. Lily was carrying her abstract painting ready to hand in, and part of her hoped Saffron didn't show up, so she would get an automatic pass to the finals, but that made her feel guilty, so she scolded herself for the thoughts. At break time, she wandered around alone for a while, finding an odd comfort in this familiarity of solitude, when she suddenly spotted a shock of red hair in a doorway. Saffron? She called out. Hey, said Saffron, stepping out of the doorway alcove and waving to Lily, a look of delirious glee on her face. Lily went to speak to her when Alex stepped out of the doorway and grinned at her, looking pleased with himself. Lily watched in dumbfounded silence as Alex took Saffron's hand and led her towards Lily. Hi, she said awkwardly. Where have you been? We had things to do, said Saffron, giggling, brushing her hair behind her ear as her cheeks went pink. Lily watched her and felt herself judging her. She thought she looked childish and stupid, and it annoyed her. She's smart, said Alex, holding Lily's gaze with an unapologetic smile on his face. She can cope with missing a couple of classes. Oh, right. Yeah, Lily muttered. Her chest hurt. Her head hurt. She felt anger at Saffron boiling in her chest and wanted to scream in Alex's face. But she hated herself for it. It wasn't fair to either of them. Are you coming to art, Saffron? We have to hand in the paintings today. She sure is, Alex answered for her, while Saffron gazed at him adoringly. She's got a stellar one, haven't you? Yeah, said Saffron dreamily, her head bobbing up and down and her eyes never leaving him. See you soon, ladies, he said with a cocky wink. He smiled at Saffron and then turned, looking at Lily, holding her gaze for a moment longer than was necessary, and then walked away. I'm so sorry I was mad at you, Saffron said once Alex was out of sight, and put her arms around Lily in a tight hug. Alex told me everything. He did? Lily asked in surprise, breaking away from her hug. Of course, Saffron enthused, bouncing on the spot, joy smeared across her face in a way that made Lily want to throw up. And thanks so much. If I'd known you were getting people to accept me so that he could ask me out, I'd never have gotten so mad, and Maisie wouldn't have got that smug smile on her stupid face. Oh, yeah, of course, said Lily. She had no idea what Saffron was talking about, but was not going to deny anything. He was so nice about you, Lil, she went on with a goofy smile. I can definitely tell you guys are good friends. He was? Yeah. But he said you waste your potential, she said, suddenly serious. That you could do so much more if you put your mind to it. He said you could be really powerful if you weren't so scared all the time. He did? Asked Lily, scowling. I told him about your spider and how you're scared, she continued, apparently oblivious to Lily's growing irritation. But he said that because those lives only exist because of you, they're artificial, so it's not like a real person dying or anything. Plus spiders are just spiders, right? So it's no reason not to use your power. But yesterday you agreed with me, Lily argued. A life is a life. He's totally right, you know, Saffron went on, ignoring Lily. Think about how much you could do. You could be a legend. You could be the absolute bomb. Lily stayed silent as Saffron babbled away about how wonderful Alex was on their way to the art room. She tried to listen, made vague efforts at smiling and nodding, but her mind was just too busy. She was thinking about her power. She was thinking about life. She was silently fuming about Alex. As they sat down, they got their paintings out and set them down on the desk side by side. Saffron's was a spiky, fierce work with hot pinks and oranges and reds. Lily's was a drifting sea of grey tears and blue thoughts. You pair are very different beings, observed Mr. Hogg with a chuckle, as he took the paintings from her. We aren't that different, said Saffron to Lily after he moved away. Well, other than the whole magic thing. "Attention, please," announced Mr. Hogg from the front of the class. He positioned Lily and Saffron's paintings upright on the desk behind him for everyone to see alongside Richard's. "We have an exciting development for whichever two make it to the final. Karen Archer herself will be judging the final round live in front of the year group on the last day of school." "Wow," Lily said as her eyes widened. "Awesome," Saffron whispered, gripping Lily's hand. "I need this." "I'm a bit worried about the last round," Lily admitted to Saffron as they headed geography. "I don't know how to draw an animal without it coming to life. How am I going to enter if I can't paint anything?" "Dunno, but I guess I'll win then," said Saffron with a broad smile across her face. Lily opened her mouth and closed it again, not sure if she was joking or not. "Or you could learn how to control it, I guess." "I'll have to," she said with a frustrated sigh as they reached the classroom. "I just don't know how." "Welcome, welcome," announced Dr. Murray as they walked in. Lily and Saffron exchanged worried looks as they took in the tables that were arranged in large groups around the room, with assigned seating. Dr. Murray laughed at everyone's horror and confirmed with delight, "Yes, it's group work time." "Here's us," said Lily to Saffron, finding their names side by side and breathing with relief. "And Maisie," muttered Saffron, checking out the other names on the table and letting out a groan of despair. "Our end-of-year project on Peru will be presented to the year group on Wednesday," announced Dr. Murray. "Each group is going to create a display board, and each person in the group is going to perform part of a talk. Right. Go." "Right," announced Maisie to the group, standing up and smacking a palm on the table to command their attention. "Jake and Anthony, you can do stuff about plants. Saffron, you can help me do a piece about fashion. Lily, you can do animals. I don't know, draw a llama." "What?" Lily asked in a panic. No. Saffron should do it. Saffron's much better at that stuff than me." "Saffron is much better suited to fashion than animals, so you'll just have to do it on your own. You should be used to be doing things on your own," Maisie said with a cruel smirk. "Call it a chance to get your drawing seen by someone. It's not like you're going to win this competition, is it?" "You have to work this out anyway, right?" Saffron whispered quietly to her. "And if it goes wrong, maybe we'll get bonus marks for bringing a real Peruvian llama." "Go on then," said Maisie, glaring at her with her hands on her hips. "Get drawing." And that was the end of chapter 8 of Lilly Prospero and the Magic Rabbit by me, JJ Bonds. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon. Bye.